My boyfriend cheated with a coworker, even after I forgave him over and over, so I made his whole world collapse after he betrayed me one last time. My cheating ex told me to get over it, but I uncovered his affair and how he chose her over me. My boyfriend, Dave, and I started dating when we were about 15 years old. You could say we were high school sweethearts. In the year 2016, I helped him land a new warehouse job with a higher pay increase. We were all so excited for him to start that we celebrated by taking our 2-year-old to Disneyland. At the time, I didn't know what was about to come. Dave finally started his job, and 2 months in, he began to behave differently toward me. This is when I started to get a gut feeling inside of me. He started snapping at me for the littlest things. He stopped talking to me about work, and our intimacy went from 4 times a week to him demanding it every day. It was around our anniversary in February when we were arguing through text. I asked him if there was someone else, and he responded, yes. My heart sank. The pain I felt was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It's not a pain I would wish on anyone. I called him, but it went to voicemail. I called again, and again. It was voicemail. He texted me that he needed to go to work and couldn't talk. The revelation hit me like a devastating tidal wave, completely overwhelming every fiber of my being. My entire world seemed to crumble instantaneously, and I found myself spiraling into an emotional abyss that I had never experienced before. The psychological impact was so severe that it manifested physically. My body became weak and trembling, while waves of dizziness washed over me repeatedly. It felt as though the ground beneath my feet had disappeared, leaving me suspended in a nightmarish void of disbelief and anguish. My cardiovascular system seemed to rebel against the shock, with my heart pounding so violently against my ribcage that I genuinely feared it might burst from the sheer intensity of the emotional trauma. Simultaneously, my throat constricted with such force that each breath became a conscious struggle, as if invisible hands were slowly tightening around my neck. The pain was all-consuming and unlike anything I had ever endured in my relatively young life. In the midst of this overwhelming chaos, my mind frantically searched for answers and explanations. I found myself obsessively replaying every moment of our relationship, desperately trying to identify the exact moment when everything had gone wrong. Where had I failed him? What had I done to drive him toward another woman? The self-doubt and blame consumed me as I tortured myself with endless questions that seemed to have no satisfactory answers. When the weekend finally arrived, bringing with it the bitter irony of February 14th, Valentine's Day, we sat down for what would become one of the most painful conversations of my life. Despite the romantic significance of the date, there was nothing celebratory about our discussion. Dave looked me directly in the eyes and made solemn promises, swearing on everything that mattered to him that nothing physical or inappropriate had ever transpired between him and this other woman. He attempted to explain his emotional state, describing his feelings as something that had developed spontaneously and caught him completely off guard. According to his account, these intense emotions had emerged without warning or intention, creating a confusing internal conflict that he claimed he hadn't known how to handle. Despite this emotional turmoil, he emphasized repeatedly that he had no desire to end our relationship and wanted to work through this difficult situation together. However, his reassurances did little to heal the deep wounds that his confession had inflicted upon my heart and soul. I felt utterly betrayed by the person I had trusted most in the world, and the hurt penetrated so deeply that it seemed to alter my very core. The foundation of our relationship, built on years of shared experiences and mutual trust, had been shattered in a single moment of brutal honesty. In my desperation to salvage what remained of our relationship, I made what I considered reasonable demands. I pleaded with him to completely cease all communication with this woman and suggested that he consider relocating to a different apartment to create physical distance between them. These requests seemed logical and necessary to me, concrete steps that could help rebuild the trust that had been so catastrophically damaged. His response, however, was immediate and unwavering resistance. He insisted that cutting off communication was simply impossible because of their shared workplace environment. This explanation frustrated me beyond measure, as I struggled to comprehend how someone couldn't exercise basic self-control and professional boundaries. In my mind, working together didn't necessitate personal conversations or friendly interactions beyond what was absolutely required for job-related tasks. I tried to approach the situation with understanding and compromise, acknowledging the practical challenges of working in the same environment while still maintaining my boundaries. I suggested that he could remove her from his social media accounts and limit their interactions to only essential work-related communication. This seemed like a reasonable middle ground that would respect both his professional obligations and my emotional needs. To my complete dismay, he rejected this compromise entirely, showing no willingness to make even the smallest concession for the sake of our relationship. This refusal ignited a fierce determination within me, and I found myself escalating the conversation into what could only be described as an intense verbal confrontation. I made it crystal clear that his choice was simple but consequential. He could either prioritize his relationship with this other woman or fight to save what we had built together, but he couldn't have both. The ultimatum hung heavy in the air between us, and after what felt like an eternity of tense silence and emotional warfare, he finally offered what seemed like a reluctant apology. Months passed, and I was still hurt by the situation. For some reason, there was still a feeling deep inside me that told me he was still talking to her. I brushed that feeling aside because of how in love I was with this man. By the end of the year, I was transferred to the same workplace as my boyfriend. I didn't tell him until the week of my first day. He was shocked and didn't understand why I was being transferred to his building. That was red flag number 1. He asked me to request a move elsewhere. When I asked why it was so bad to be in the same workplace, he said there wasn't anything wrong with it, but I probably wouldn't like being there. I told him I was fine, had no issue, and left it at that. On my first day on the job, I met amazing people. I had fun and enjoyed being around others. At lunchtime, my friend and I found a table, sat, and enjoyed our lunch. Then I saw my boyfriend come in. He and his friend sat at the table next to us. Picture this, there are 2 seats to his left vacant, I am on his right, and his friend and my friend are facing us on the other side of the table. He introduced me to his friend, and we were talking about my first day when I got this weird feeling. I looked up, and there was this female walking by our table. She took a seat to the left of my boyfriend. My heart sank as I felt my boyfriend tense up. I somehow knew it was her. He didn't introduce me to her. I want to say thank you to those who are interested in my story. All this happened a couple of years ago, so there is a resolution to it. I posted my story in multiple parts so it wouldn't be too long. Here's the rest of my story. For context, my boyfriend's name is Dave, and the other female we will call Mary. As Mary made her way to the seat next to my boyfriend, I felt him tense up. I somehow knew she was the other one. I looked at my boyfriend and asked him to scoot closer to me. He did. My friend, who I met on the first day, looked at Mary, then at my boyfriend, then at me. She gave me a questionable look. I shrugged my shoulders, expressing that I didn't know. Once lunch was over, everyone but my boyfriend and I left. I remember thinking, how can I ask him without starting a fight, and why didn't he introduce me? Again, I let it go. I know you're thinking, how naive of her, and you're right. He was my high school sweetheart, my first love. I wasn't ready to know yet. I wasn't ready to go through the pain again. While we worked in the same building, we were in separate departments. We met for lunch occasionally. The first couple of times, I noticed Mary sitting by my boyfriend at lunch. They sat touching elbow to elbow, laughing. I could see it in his eyes. I dismissed it again. As I walked in, she would see me and excuse herself. Mary started sitting on her own for lunch after the 4th day. That gave me some peace and made me think I was overthinking. Mary is pretty, I thought, but we were significantly different in looks and body. I thought to myself, maybe I was overreacting. It can't be her. The more I worked, the more I started to meet people. People in higher positions started training me as they saw my work ethic. I was always willing to try something new. I was trained in 2 departments before I ended up in a department next to my boyfriend's. It was an open layout, so I could see all of his department, and he could see all of mine. One day, I was working on moving boxes off the conveyor down to a pallet and cage when I looked up. I saw my boyfriend helping a female out. An overwhelming feeling of anxiety came over me. My male friend, M, also looked in the direction I was looking. He told me, that doesn't seem like nothing. My heart was beating fast as I watched my boyfriend's interaction with Mary. He was helping her lift boxes, throwing her trash away, laughing, and slightly bumping into each other. I smiled and responded, I'm sure it's nothing. That was the first time I encountered their behavior without them knowing I was around. I went home wondering if I should bring it up. I wasn't okay. I was mentally messed up. I cried out. I didn't know if my suspicions were right. I decided to ask him the next day who the girl he fell for was. The next day came, and he was driving us to work. I turned to him and asked, so, will you ever show me who the girl you fell for is? He gave me a puzzled look and said, no. I reminded him that he promised they wouldn't have contact with each other. So why couldn't I know? He responded, telling me it was unnecessary to bring it up. He said she didn't know that I knew, and he didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable. I asked him if she still worked there. He didn't respond. The silence gave me my answer. I then asked him if she knew about how he felt for her. He said nonchalantly, of course, I told her. I asked him why he would tell her, and he responded, she was asking why I was so upset, so I told her I was confused about my feelings for her. He didn't confirm if she reciprocated his feelings. I was broken again. As the days went by, I started meeting more people in my new department. As I introduced myself to them, the typical questions came up. How old are you? Are you single? Married? Did you go to school? Are you going to school? These were typical conversation starters for a warehouse job. When I was asked if I was single, I would always respond that I had a boyfriend. Their next question would be, what does he do? I would let them know that he worked here. Mind you, this warehouse had been open for about a year or so before I started working there, so a lot of workers knew each other. This is an important piece of information. A lot of the time, they would ask me who my boyfriend was, and I happily showed them. Every time I did, they responded, "Oh, he's your boyfriend?" I was always scared to ask the next question, but I'm glad I did. "Yes, he is." "Why?" I responded. They would chuckle nervously and say, "No reason. I just thought he was with someone else." Every time I pushed forward to know who they were referring to, they would say it was someone who worked in his department. I felt it was a joke. I was here working, and yet I looked like a fool to everyone. Everyone knew, and I didn't. One day, I was leaving and went to my boyfriend's department to grab him so we could go. As I got to him, he was in deep conversation with Mary. He didn't look at me once or acknowledge me. Mary looked my way and signaled him with her head that I was there. He looked at me and asked why I was there. I told him it was time to go, and since he was on the way, I thought we could walk together. He looked at the time and said, "We have 5 minutes more," then returned to his conversation with her. I felt like an idiot. Mary looked at me and decided to introduce herself. "Hi, I'm Mary. I don't think Dave has introduced us," she said. I looked at Dave and responded, "Yeah, I don't know why he hasn't." I then introduced myself. Dave interrupted, saying he never had us together to introduce us. He apologized and said his goodbyes to Mary. I didn't know how to take this. He had us together on my first day, and he didn't introduce us. I wanted to ask him if it was her, but what if it wasn't? He would get mad that I didn't get over the entire "there's someone else" situation and leave me with our 2-year-old. I was scared. He worked with her very frequently, and it bothered me. An offer came out of the blue to be trained in his department. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea, but I thought, why not? I was trained, and I loved it there. The entire department was incredibly fun to be in. The people were feisty but very uplifting. I used to question why my boyfriend would keep going to Mary for job-related things. He would always tell me she was in charge of what went out to the workers. I met another person who did the same task as Mary. Her name was Liz. Liz informed me that Mary was her backup, but she needed another person. I asked what her job consisted of, and it was fairly interesting to me, so I offered to be her other backup. It was fun, and I loved it. I started to see Mary less and less the longer I was there. She started working in another department, and every time she came around, my boyfriend would flirt with her. Our arguments went from once in a blue moon to an everyday thing. I was very uncomfortable with his and her behavior toward each other. He always said I was overreacting, that I needed to get over the issue, that they were friends, and I needed to be okay with that. We were arguing on the way to work, and I couldn't stop crying. Tears would occasionally fall while I was working. On this particular day, I was in a different department, hidden from most of the people there. It was just me and another coworker. He did his best to get me to open up to him. I decided, why not? I told him why I was upset, and thankfully I did because what he told me changed everything for me. He confirmed that Dave was into Mary, but Mary did not give him the time of day. My boyfriend even intervened in his chance to talk to her by telling him to keep his distance from her. That was it for me. There wasn't any going back. On the way home, I was silent. My boyfriend tried making conversation, but I responded with him more em. That night, we were lying in bed, and he was falling asleep. I woke him. "Hey, babe," I said. "Yeah," he responded. "Is it Mary, the one you swore you weren't talking to?" I asked. The silence felt like an eternity. "Yes. I'm going to sleep," he said. I told him no, we needed to talk about it. He refused. He told me to let it go. That was his favorite phrase, let it go. It hurt. He ripped the band-aid that I had closed up with his lies. I begged him to talk to me, and he refused, saying if I couldn't let it go, he was leaving me. I asked if he was being honest because I couldn't completely trust him anymore. He said they had been intimate, and he broke up with me. My world ended. I cried for days and couldn't be myself without breaking apart. I asked him not to tell her anything until I was ready to tell the world we were over. The next day at work, I was stuck in his department. I was sent to deliver some materials to Mary's department. As I was walking back, Mary came up to me, smiling. She asked how I was. I let her know I was doing fine. At this rate, I was trying to keep my cool. The next question out of her mouth angered me. "How are you and Dave doing?" she asked. I knew she knew. He told her. I could feel it in my bones. "Oh, we broke up," I said. "Oh no, why?" "Because of you?" I responded. "I didn't mean for anything to happen. I'm sorry." "Nothing happened. He's just a friend, that's all we are," she said. "You couldn't stop talking to him?" I asked. "No, we worked together, and we were friends," she said. I saw my boyfriend as we walked back to my department. He looked scared. I walked by him back to my area, and he stopped to talk to Mary. I didn't care what they had to say to each other. I hated him. I hated her. I'll end my story here. In the end, I begged him to get back together. In the moment, that's all I ever wanted, to keep our family together, to go back to how we once were. I wanted us to be okay again. I have no idea what happened between him and Mary during our separation. He swore he didn't want to look like a jerk and jump into a relationship with her. I don't know what the truth is. I hated him still when we got back together. I have never felt so low in my life. I asked him to choose his friendship with Mary or to be with me and co-parent our child. Instead of ending his friendship by telling her, he chose to quit. What a coward. A few months had passed since our reconciliation when I discovered I was expecting again. This pregnancy wasn't an accident or surprise, it had been carefully planned and discussed between Dave and me. We both felt strongly that our first child deserved to have a sibling, someone to grow up with and share life's experiences. After much consideration and heart-to-heart conversations, we had mutually decided to expand our family and give our toddler the gift of a brother or sister. The timing of this pregnancy coincided with what would become Mary's final days at the warehouse. By some cruel twist of fate or perhaps just unfortunate scheduling, I found myself assigned to work alongside her during her last week. The atmosphere between us was thick with unspoken tension and awkward politeness. We maintained a professional demeanor, speaking only when absolutely necessary for work-related matters, each of us clearly uncomfortable with the forced proximity. During one of these strained interactions, Mary approached me for assistance with some heavy boxes that needed to be moved. Without thinking, I automatically responded, "I can't lift these boxes." She suggested we could work together to handle them, but I had to decline again, explaining, "I can't because I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between us like a revelation. Mary's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Her eyes widened with genuine surprise, as if this news had caught her completely off guard. After a moment of stunned silence, she managed to offer what sounded like congratulations, but her tone was so artificially cheerful and forced that it felt more like a performance than a sincere sentiment. "Congratulations," she said, but everything about her delivery, the slight hesitation, the overly bright smile, the way her voice pitched just a bit too high, screamed insincerity. I wasn't in the mood for fake pleasantries or awkward small talk about my personal life with someone who had been at the center of so much pain in my relationship. My response was curt and dismissive. "Yep." Without another word or backward glance, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with her hollow congratulations still echoing in the space between us. Now you may ask if my boyfriend and I are still together. No. Do I still hate him? No. Do I blame Mary? No, but it would have been nice if she was a girl's girl. Do I believe Mary or Dave about nothing happening or if they were intimate? I don't know. I will never know. Trust was broken. Thank you for reading my story. I was naive for a really long time. No one deserves to be cheated on. It's sad that there are people out there who, instead of leaving their partner, decide to cheat. I'm sorry for anyone going through this. It scars you and changes you. I still, to this day, have trust issues, but I am working through them. Several readers have reached out with thoughtful questions about my current situation, and I appreciate their genuine concern and curiosity about how things have evolved since my story ended. One of the most frequent inquiries I've received concerns Dave's effectiveness as a co-parent in our post-relationship dynamic. I'll be completely transparent, the transition into co-parenting wasn't smooth sailing by any stretch of the imagination. Those initial months were incredibly challenging and emotionally draining for both of us. We found ourselves caught in a cycle of constant disagreements and heated arguments, often rehashing old wounds and unresolved resentments from our failed relationship. The tension was palpable whenever we had to interact, and our conversations frequently devolved into bitter exchanges that left us both feeling frustrated and emotionally exhausted. However, as time gradually passed and we both began to process our emotions more maturely, something shifted between us. We eventually reached a crucial realization that our persistent fighting was not only destructive to our own well-being but was also creating an unstable and unhealthy environment for our children. This wake-up call forced us to confront the reality that we needed to find a way to work together effectively, regardless of our personal feelings toward each other. Slowly but surely, we began to establish boundaries and develop a more functional co-parenting relationship. I'm genuinely pleased to report that Dave has really stepped up to the plate in recent months. His dedication to our children is evident in everything he does, and I can honestly say that I deeply admire and respect the father he has become. He's consistently present, engaged, and loving with both kids, and his commitment to their well-being never wavers. Additionally, whenever my work schedule becomes particularly demanding or unexpected situations arise on my designated days, Dave never hesitates to offer his assistance and support without any complaints or conditions. Another question that comes up regularly is whether Dave and Mary ultimately ended up together romantically. The answer is definitively no. They never pursued a relationship after our breakup. From the information I've gathered through mutual acquaintances and occasional updates, when Dave made the decision to quit his job at the warehouse, he effectively severed most of his ties with Mary and essentially cut off communication with the majority of his former co-workers from that workplace. Your relationship with Dave ended long before you were trying to beg for it to stay together. Not only that, but he completely humiliated you. I feel like you may still be a little naive about what happened. Yes, it's sad that there are people out there who cheat instead of leaving their partner, but what's also sad is that there are people who decide to stay with a partner who cheats on them right in front of their face, and they have to witness it every day at work.